Good afternoon and welcome to the Forum Live, the stream that brings you the news and information from the workplace on behalf of not only the Leeds branch but the North East region. My name is Scott Haslam, President of the Leeds #1 Amalgamated Branch of the Communication Workers Union. In today's session, I'm joined by Steve Halliwell, CW Postal Executive and National Executive Member, Graham Pudsey, the Leeds Mail Centre Area Processing Rep, and we want to talk about the processing function. Now, if you've been following our post, we did suggest we would have a secret special guest, and I'm now glad to announce that our special guest is David Robertson. So, hi, David.
Hi, good morning. Good morning to everybody that's watching. Looking forward to the session.
Excellent. Steve, we're going to give a quick brief of an introduction of yourself, because a lot of people may not know who you are.
Yeah, basically, I've worked for Royal Mail for 30 years, coming up in August. Been a rep since 1997, area processing rep in Newcastle, and then I've been a divisional rep, and then I've been on the executive. So I've been active for the last 24 years in the trade union. So I've done every job in Royal Mail except for driving Arctic. So very good experience across the board.
Well, what you missing every goods. I'm sure David and I can pick up that slack. So, Graham, do you want to introduce for people across the region who you are?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Graham Pudsey. I'm area processing rep. Currently been doing job for the last 4 years. Been active union member 15 years. There to represent people in Mail Centre, and this is a chance for people to ask questions.
Excellent. Do you want to cover off briefly, Davey, if people don't know who you are, which I'll be very, very surprised?
I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who don't know who I am. Good morning, everybody. Afternoon now, sorry. My name is David Robertson. I'm the National Officer, covering a range of functions, including processing, also including, as Scott alluded to, the LGV and the MGV fleets, so national network and distribution, parcel force, Royal Mail International, RMSS, actually sometimes feels like almost everything except delivery, and admin, but we've got some of them as well. So I've worked in and around Royal Mail and parcel force since the late 80s. I've done most jobs in Royal Mail, including driving Arctics, which became my main role from the early 90s. And I've been the officer now for 6 years and was a postal executive member for 10 years before that. So time flies when you're having fun.
Excellent. So today's session quite open, but we do want to cover off specifically around the processing function and actually the joint statement that will form the framework really for the revisions you're perhaps seeing in Leeds, Newcastle, Sheffield, and indeed all the mail centres up and down the country. So any questions relating to that, leave them in the comments and we'll try and pick them up as we go through this session. If you've got friends, colleagues who not watching, tag them in, point them our way, and see if they've got any questions that they'd like to. So let's now get this session in practice. So I think it's wise to sort of look back 12 months ago and just sort of see where we were, particularly from a processing perspective with the company, where the union was pre-pandemic and actually into the pandemic. So Davey, might be a good starting point for you to sort of start off where we were as a short recap on the last 12 months, really.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And really, I mean, I suppose today of all days when we've seen, the newspaper headlines this morning, what 12 months has been, it's, and even less than 12 months, I can say to you as Steve would be aware from the executive meetings, as one of the negotiators, as late as the end of last summer, we were still facing an employer who was saying, pay, we'll give you a lump sum, nothing else. Anything else would have to be paid for out of savings. Anything else would have to be paid for out of savings after we've had our cut. And that was in return for what at the time the company was talking about 12,000 redundancies. So we would have to sign up in advance to 12,000 people leaving the business in order to get a pay rise that wasn't a pay rise. They also saw a scenario where effectively there was a document they presented called the Negotiated Outcomes document, which effectively would have been a terms of surrender for this trade union. Effectively, they said jump and we asked how high. They told us what they were doing and then expected us to have that conversation with you. So to get from there within 6 months to a point where I think we delivered, what by any measures was in the current climate was an excellent pay settlement. When we compare that to what nurses and other key workers have been offered, an excellent outcome. But even then, to move from there to a point where today the new chief executive is talking in a newspaper which is never a friend of this trade union, the Daily Mail, about the fact that Royal Mail has an endemic problem with bullying. It almost seems, you have to pinch yourself sometimes to consider how things turned. And they turned because, to be honest, it never turns because of the people in the room. It turns because of the solidarity of the union and its members. And that's exactly the case here. Through the solidarity shown by you, through the determination and the strength and the backing for your union, we were able to convince the company that there was another way, that there was a way to grab the growth that's available. Because COVID has brought many things, and COVID, again, an unprecedented year. And while COVID has brought real tragedy and personal, adversity for many people and real, desperate outcomes for people. For the company, though, financially, it has been a game changer. Now, I don't welcome the first to deliver the second, but as Steve knows, I mean, we've spoken about it on a number of occasions during the talks when the chair of Royal Mail, Keith Williams, joined the talks, which was a positive development. His analogy was the COVID bounce with regards to revenue was like getting hit up the arse by a rainbow. His words, not mine, because it was unexpected, but it has changed the fortunes of the business. And it has allowed us to persuade the business that there is another way to grab growth. But there's still a lot to do. We'll talk about this morning, we'll talk about what it means just now in mail centres to grab the second hour of the shorter working week, which we absolutely want. We also want the third hour and the fourth hour, and we'll talk about that. And if there's time, I'm sure we can talk a bit about what the future starts to look like in a world with parcel hubs and what that means for processing and how we can secure the future of the whole estate. So we're in a far more positive position, Scott, than a year ago or 6 months ago. We have an opportunity here. We're determined to grab it. And it's through sessions like this that it's really useful to have that discussion and to move the debate on, because it's absolutely crucial that people understand what it is we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, and why we think now, if the company stay true to their word, that there is now an opportunity to start making real progress, which has been difficult over the last couple of years where the RICO regime effectively declared war and we spent 2 years in dispute. So I think we're in a decent place, Scott. There's an awful lot of work to do, but that's what this morning's about, having that debate.
Excellent. Have you got any additional comments to that, Steve?
Yeah, all I would say was that obviously thanks to the members, the resolve, that kind of thing, in making sure that every mail centre, every delivery office, etc., held the line behind the union, not allowing change to take place, and standing shoulder with our reps, ensured that the business had no alternative but to back down and listen to the union. And then obviously we delivered the pathway to change and the pay rises, etc. So, you never get anything without a fight. And what we're proving is that by solidarity, we've got a really good outcome. So, I'm more than happy with that agreement. And obviously we've just got to make sure it's deployed now and we get all the benefits of it.
Excellent. Graham?
Yeah, I'd just like to tell people when Rico back were in charge, throughout every mail centre in country, it was just agency. I know we've used a lot of agency during lockdown and that, but as soon as this agreement were changed in Leeds Mail Centre, we got a commitment and we've made 130 part-time people full-time for a year, just on the backdrop of agreeing this agreement. So I think it shows a bit of commitment there from Royal Mail, because in 2019, it took me about 6 months to get 20 people full-time. I had to have go to a flashpoint. I had to get a processing director involved. Me and divisional rep Gary Hodgkinson had a meeting, and then business finally agreed to make some people full-time. That took me months, and we've got this agreement now, and it's just Royal Mail was straight away, yeah, we'll make them full-time for a year, which is good for membership as well. They've stood behind us, so we need to give them something back.
And that, I think, ties us in nicely to his next point. So in terms of how we're going to give things back to the members, like we alluded to in the introduction, really, there's a joint statement that's been committed to, which forms a framework of how we would deploy that vision, really, within the processing functions. So with that in mind, what does the joint statement cover? Do you want to start off with that then, Steve?
Yeah, no problem, Chair Scott. So that joint statement actually commits Royal Mail and the union to reviewing every single workplace, every processing function across the country, to look at workload, to look at throughputs, to look at anything that's really changed in the recent past, and for to go through a process of agreeing a new baseline of hours in every single unit. And what that actually does is make it resets the resourcing in all processing functions for to give the benefits of the agreement. So that joint statement commits Royal Mail to agreeing throughputs, the actual throughputs of the unit, so not aspirational ones. It commits them to removing agency from units. Just as importantly, it commits Royal Mail to implementing the shorter working week, so everybody gets a 1 hour off. So full-timers get a 1 hour, and part-timers get a 2.9% pay rise on the back of it. And all of this has got to be delivered by late spring, early summer. So around about end of June is really the aspirational target that we're all setting ourselves. So there's a whole host of things. But the other thing that's also in the joint statement, which is going to be really important, is although it's great words on a page, it's making sure that these things are actually deployed. So if you think about in the past, we've had some excellent agreements, and we always deliver excellent agreements. The issue is making sure that Royal Mail actually adhere to them and fully comply and buy into them. And what we've built into this one, which is different to what we've done in the past, is a governance process to make sure that from a national basis, we can see what's been agreed in every single unit. So every single processing centre will agree a statement of what's been agreed, how they're going to deploy that, what the differences are. So, how many part-timers are going to increase their hours, how many full-time contracts are going to be created, how many agency hours are being removed. And the biggest thing in there is that the agency commitment from the business, that agency usage will be eradicated. So there's some really big things. I mean, we'll never eradicate agency, 100%. There'll always be a one-off occasion or a couple of days or whatever when we've got high sick absence or we've got a bulk posting, that kind of thing. But what it does is it makes sure that we remove agency from the abuse that there has been for many years, where the business have cut hours from every single mail centre in return for casualising the industry. And what it does is it resets that balance, puts proper jobs in, gives proper jobs to people. So we know in most sites we've had people working for an agency with no stability, no future in terms of employment with Royal Mail, apart from that phone call from their agency saying, "Oh, you've got 4 or 8 hours today." What this does is it gives people proper jobs, so it's going to be a real positive change for everyone. So the joint statement's got some real benefits for new people, but got some real benefits for existing staff, new attendances, that kind of stuff, and new jobs. So real positive thing for us to actually deploy.
Excellent. Yeah. So I've got the joint statement here. So if the first sort of highlighted paragraph there, I thought ties into nicely. A little plug, shall we say, for tomorrow's session with Chris and Terry, which I put on screen now. So Monday the 26th at 5 p.m. an open Q&A. They did a Q&A last week, and on the back of that, the Royal Mail boss was vowed to root out the bullying and change of culture. Now, that paragraph there specifically says exactly that. So that is certainly something, I think, if you agree, Davey, perhaps to pick up that the culture thing is picked up across all joint statements with looks of it. And no, this is no difference within processing. No,
it's not, Scott, and it's key. And to be honest, if you look across all of the agreements that come out of the department, we try to be consistent in the wording, and you'll find that wording in all of our agreements, because it's absolutely crucial. I suppose it's worth saying, and actually Steve during the negotiations was very, very firm on this point. We believed that the agreements we had in processing from the 4 Pillars Agreement were sound, were fit for purpose. And actually, one of the big successes of the Pathway to Change Agreement is we managed to persuade the business that was the case. So effectively, what this joint statement didn't try to do is reinvent the wheel. It actually said what we have in place, if it's used properly, which clearly it wasn't being, it works. So we had a good base to start from. But you're absolutely right. The key to this is to change the environment, to build trust in the workplace, but also to build trust in the way that the agreement's being deployed. And what Steve said about the monitoring process that Steve's a part of, the ensures that we are there to assist reps with the discussions all the way through, is something we've added this time round. Because what we found the last time is we started off great guns, but very quickly management reverted to type. It was, as Graham said earlier, it was more about cost and just use agency and try to sneak changes into work plan without agreement. So what we've got here now is a process that we've jointly launched, we've jointly trained on. We've also supported that with our own training. And we are jointly monitoring through on our side through effectively what are experts in the field. Steve, Mahmood Ali, another postal national executive member who works in my department, and they're doing a fantastic job in supporting our reps through this process. So we are determined to rebuild trust, not just the everyday thing, but actually ensuring that when we make an agreement, that the agreement has status and that the agreement is deployed in the way it was envisaged. And this time we're determined to do more than the last time round to try and make sure that that's the case. Doesn't make Steve's life and Mahmood's life very easy, because it's not the only thing they're doing just now. Their workload is huge, but they've committed to do that on behalf of our reps and members everywhere, and they're doing an excellent job in that regard.
Yeah. So, Graham, on the back of Steve and David's comments, then, are you open and actually welcome this statement to give you and your negotiators the sort of tools and power then and the framework to sort of mould a better, proper job, to use Steve's language, in Leeds? Oh, we could be having technical problems. Well, Yeah, I think we've got.
You never
Yeah,
freeze.
that's-
You have a good look in your face.
Absolutely. Apologise about that, Graham. Oh, he's back. He's using technology to its fullest. He's streaming via his phone, tethered up to his computer. So unfortunately, I just had a slight blip there. Graham, do you want to pick back up where you were?
Yeah, so we're back on. So obviously, we've had training from Mahmood and Steve, but also we've had a joint session as well. And I'd be truthful, it's first time I've ever had a joint session. I've had a manager at side of me who's been doing it, which shows their commitment as well. But it means we're both on same song sheet, and we have got a long way in a few weeks, which is good. We've agreed the shorter working week on all 3 shifts. So all shifts will go to a 7-hour 24 attendance. And as soon as we can get that implemented, like Steve says, we can get as part-time a 2.9% pay rise.
Excellent. So the next part of the statement covers off it's titled Interim Processing Realignment Strategy. So as I understand that, that's the sort of agreed levels of additional earnings opportunities and essays and rebalancing in one for another. Do you want to just expand on that a little bit, Steve?
Yeah. So what we're expecting from this realignment is obviously once you've got through the process and you've looked at the hours, there's a program that kind of suggests how many hours is required for the process that work. It's like dealt with as a block. And then once you've got all of that data, you can then say, well, actually, we've got 100 hours as an example. That could be 12 jobs, 13 jobs, whatever. Or it could be a situation where you're looking at increasing contracts. So, but the big thing is once we've went through that process, what we'll be looking at is what opportunities there is for mail centres, for area reps and mail centre managers to deploy for our members in the workforce. So as part of that, what we're expecting is that we'll be maximising part-time contracts. So I think Leeds is an example because of the impact of the COVID and the traffic increases through shops being closed, etc. We're using nigh on 11,000 hours of agency each week. So that creates, absolutely huge opportunities for us. And that's what this agreement actually gives us the opportunity to do, to grasp that and make sure that when we're coming to these negotiations on duty structures, we're looking at maximising part-time contracts, because obviously not everybody wants to be full-time, but we make sure that the contracts are right. We'll maximise full-time jobs. That's going to be absolutely critical, because obviously at the moment we've got agency coming in every day. That's a full-time job. At the end of the day, it's not a casual contract, that kind of stuff. We want to make sure that we've got enough reserves against them full-time or part-time jobs. So when someone goes on holiday, the business don't have any reason for to go to agency for to cover that person when they're on annual leave. We also want to make sure that there's a reasonable level of earnings. So obviously, people rely upon overtime and schedule attendance, that kind of stuff. And we also need to get the resourcing right with annual leave, because that's another example of the business not having enough hours in the unit where they then go to the agency. So again, it's this whole package of making sure that we capture all of the hours into proper jobs, and make sure that that there isn't any call really, unless there's an extreme situation of high sick absence or a bulk person that can't be factored in through overtime and resourcing using our members, that they've got no reason for to go outside of it. So there's some huge opportunities. One of the big things, and a lot of people have seen this in the past, and this is probably not going to be a popular statement, is that we made an absolute statement is that there's no VRs, and we're not going to have a situation where there's going to be VRs in a unit where we've got agency. It's just an absolute nonsense. You can't give a job away a VR and then have another agency worker coming through the door. You know, that's not what a trade union is about maximising jobs. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunities, and what I would say from this realignment, so you think about what opportunities that there can be. You know, you've got 3-day weeks, you've got 4-day weeks, or 3-day nights, 4-day nights, whatever, continentals, you know, whatever. You know, you can do as much as or as little as you want as part of this. But, you know, even if you think about, you know, and I know that 11,000 hours is the maximum at the minute in Leeds. But even if you were to say 6,000 or 7,000 hours going to be converted into jobs, that's huge opportunities for jobs. It's huge opportunities for to put in some cracking attendance patterns for people, and for to make sure that people get a much better work-life balance. So, you know, so as an example, 3 days at work, 4 days off. You know, it's wonderful. You know, so there's some real opportunities for mail centres to grasp this and put proper jobs in. And for those that don't want to do overtime, you know, that spend as little time at work as they possibly can and get a cracking full-time wage. So, you know, huge opportunities.
Excellent. So within the joint statement, there's another highlighted point we've got here. So it's what it reads is the overarching aim of this activity is to improve efficiency in achieving better alignment of core resource to workload. In doing so, removing reliance. So this is kind of talking about like efficiency in one regard. So we've heard about weighted items per work hour, which if you want a little bit more about that, we did a delivery revision session with Martin Walsh and Darren Glabocka, and it kind of explains it in quite some detail. So if you go over to our YouTube channel, then you'll be able to watch that and get that extra information. But weighted items per hour and this efficiency and what that statement actually says doesn't mean to get more efficiency, you hit someone over the head with a stick and make them work harder and faster. It's all about having the people in the correct workplace at the right time to do the work that's available. So, you know, how did you come to this sort of conclusion? What were the epiphany moment with the business, Davey?
Well,
on that part,
I think it would be wrong to say there was an epiphany moment. Actually, I think they've been dragged kicking and screaming to a position. Because listen, this ain't the first time we've agreed this, is it? We agreed that the agenda for growth, the legal contract, so it's not even an agreement, it's part of the contract between the company and the union, which says, and this won't be verbatim, but it pretty much is in the general vicinity of agency staff should only be used for workload that's not expected to last more than 12 weeks. Other than that, we should be resourcing against it. And, you know, that is something, and if you look at the new agreement, the pathway to change, in the section 2.4, it said, all future revision activity will reduce reliance on agency casual staff and restore the agenda for growth, 4 pillars commitments on staffing and criteria for use of external resource. So we've tied them to a position. The key now is to make this time different, make sure that it happens. And, you know, it's a funny thing. Resourcing should be the easiest thing in the world, but we inherently make it difficult. You know, resourcing relies on very few things. Workload. So what is the workload? And this agreement spoke about in a COVID environment how you set the model week. What's your throughput? We have agreed, as we have previously, but for the purposes of this realignment, they've agreed that the throughputs are the current. So we've got 2 of the elements. Those 2 elements create the third, which is how many hours do you need? Once you know how many hours you need, you resource against it. So if we establish what the workload is, if we establish you know, exactly how many hours we need on each shift, then we realign staff to that shift. It's the same throughputs, but what we should get is we should remove the agency and casual resource where it's not dealing purely with unexpected peaks, which is what it should be used for. And it should allow us the other part, which is the appropriate realignment. It should get us the right amount of people in the right place at the right time. It's no more complicated than that. Of course, there is another element, which is a difficult one for us. So let's not kid ourselves about it. You know, we can we can go all John Wayne and say, that's it, we're going to drive agency out, or rather not necessarily drive them out, offer them a job. We can do that, but let's not kid ourselves, and I'm not being controversial here. I think every single person will recognise it. Quite a lot of our agency use is at times when our members haven't traditionally found attending themselves particularly attractive. So weekends, we use an awful lot of agency at the weekend. Now, we can only drive that element of agency out if we find a way to make weekend working more palatable. And that's where, as I'm sure, and Steve, again, has been a big driver in this and a keen advocate of it. That's where inventive duty patterns, not saying we, in a mail centre, we do 3 shifts, 6-2, 2-10, 10-6, Monday to Friday, and weekends are overtime, or in reality, a lot of weekends are agency. Let's find ways to make weekend working more palatable. I don't want people forced to do it where we can avoid it. Absolutely don't. But I actually think if we can get duty structures that make, 3-day weeks, 4-day weeks, rotations where you might work the odd weekend, but not every weekend. A lot of the stuff we do in national logistics, Scott, where we're further down the road on that. That's one of the areas that we need to develop as part of this process.
Excellent. So I think that ties in nicely to the sort of next sort of point on his agenda was where's the current situation locally. So Graham, I think that's a nice bit where you can picking on from what Davey and Steve had said and about the sort of inventive duty structures, the support that you've received, and maybe you might be able to announce any exclusive propositions.
Yeah. So we have been. I've had meetings with early turn manager, early turn rep, lates and nights. It's looking like we're going to have some 3 and 4 day attendances that hopefully the business will agree in next week or so, and then we can get them advertised. I want to get them advertised, and then we can see where some more shortfalls are. So we might get people coming off a machine, so we need to get them advertised as well. We need the machines fully utilised all times. And what just touch on as well with what Steve was saying, the reserves. So reserve on a shift is there to cover sick and holiday. I'll give you an insight. In Leeds at minute, we've got a late shift that is about 180 full-time. And then we've got about 150 part-time. And currently we've got 4 reserves. And we should, as reserves, 4 people can't cover 180 people full-time on sick and holiday. So business have yet agreed again that we're going to have a reserve out between 1 and 5 and 1 in 7. So that's going to create, for 180 full-time, if you do it mathematically easy, 1 in 6, you're going to get 30 people as a reserve for shift, which we ain't got at minute. But yeah, talks are going really well. Like I said, we've got the shorter working week agreed on all shifts. So early turn will be a 6:36 till 2 o'clock if you're a 5-day shift. Late's a 2:36 while 10, and then night shift is 10:36 till 6 in the morning. We've done it that way because late turn, if we shave time off the finishing time, it goes into the shift allowance. So we've to always be careful of that. And we don't want to go below 7-hour attendance as well.
Excellent. Steve, I understand you've been in touch with the Newcastle area rep. So I don't know if you want to update the region on those conversations from a Newcastle perspective. Whether there's because I did see some social media flying around that there was trialing 3-day weeks as though it's something new and a bit sceptical of. I understand that you had conversations with Tom about that.
Yeah. So I know that we've actually got people working them now, and they've been in for a couple of weeks now. I think 2 or 3 weeks up in Newcastle. And again, this is the driver from the department, from myself, Mahmood, and Davey, making sure that we're all actually pushing, these new innovative attendances, because the shorter working week, the lower you go, the more palatable them attendances become. When we're on the 41.5, there was no way you could do a 3-day week, but obviously because of the union doing the job that we've done, we've got it down to the 37 hours. So it's really good. But we've got quite a few in Newcastle. Obviously, I'm really supporting Tom. He's the area rep, but Tom's done some cracking negotiations with the mail centre manager there, and they've got the business to accept that there'll be a trial on them. I don't believe that it'll be unsuccessful, and that was a big thing, to be honest, because I think that a lot of managers think that someone's on a 3-day week, they don't like them. What if they go sick? What about the holidays? All them, and then it goes into the what if arguments, and it's like, well, hang on a second. You're managing one person on a 12-hour shift as an example, rather than managing 2 people, a part-time and a full-time on a 12-hour shift. That's got to be more economical, more productive, and easier. And so I think they've broke the ice there, and hopefully they'll get a lot more. But I think that's a big thing for us on a national basis, that we really want plant managers, area reps, etc., to really have a go at looking at them better attendances, because we've got a lot of people. Because of the strides that we've made on basic pay and allowances, don't do overtime. So if you're coming to you've got your pension as an example, you might want to work a 3-day week. You've got a caravan, that kind of stuff. You get much more time away from the workplace, and that's what it's all about. It's about having quality time. We don't live to work. We work to live. And that's what it's really about. More time away from work, better attendances. And everyone smiles. That's got to be a big thing for us.
Excellent. I mean, to be fair, I think Dave alluded to it about the logistics network side of stuff, that I think since the PDA kicked in and they did away with the Sunday premium, which incidentally, if you are working Sunday in the mail centres, you'll be accustomed to the shift allowance the Sunday premium associated with working Sunday, which is around £6 an hour, is it? Something like that. So that's a nice tidy bonus that, if you do a full shift, particularly if you do a 3-day attendance, that's a significant bonus in your packet. And I think in terms of incentivizing people to work the weekends, which I think Dave alluded to has been difficult, they may be working 3 days where you're getting a pay rise because you're working your Sunday, and then you're getting the extra time off, or you don't have to take the time off, do you? Because if there's agency availability, that means there's ad hoc overtime or even essays potentially, and you can top up your wages on an on-block basis rather than built into duties. So yeah, it's good. So I think the next part of the joint statement, if I read it right, is about governance, and it sounds like governance is about holding the agreement to account. Would it be all right in sort of understanding that terminology, David? Yeah,
but it's as Scott, that's correct. But it's doing it on a mutual interest position. I have to say, when we first started these discussions, and even when we broke through with the national agreement in late December, 18th of December, I think we concluded it. Once we get into the discussions on January, immediately, as tends to happen in these cases, I suppose it's human nature, the business, having had Christmas and New Year to reflect on what they didn't get out of the agreement, obviously, tried to regain a bit of ground. And initially, what we saw was the business proposing a governance process which basically didn't really involve the CWU, but involved every tier of management, having their say and their right to veto a change if it didn't, you know, hit whatever metrics they were working to, which would undoubtedly be budget. So, you know, whether it be the plant manager, the you know, various tiers, production management up to the SDL or even the SDD, if that's what we're still calling them, would have the right of veto to send an agreement back. What we said is, no, that ain't going to work for us. If we're going to have a governance process, and we should, then it should be one that's a joint one that's run by senior people in the trade union and senior people in the business. And effectively, what we've agreed is a bit like we've done again. You know, I suppose because we cover so many functions, and I never like to miss a learning point, and I never see a barrier between functions. So you'll know, Scott, we've had this process for the network reviews since 2007, where we've had done. It used to be me originally that did it for the network reviews. Now it's Shelley Banbury, and this is the first time we're trying to do it for processing, though. And listen, it works, because what it does is allow, if Graham or Tom or Richard, all who are excellent reps, and you know, you're really well served in this part of the country, but if any of them highlighted to Steve or Mahmood that management weren't playing ball, or they were trying to backtrack on some of the agreement, or they were being unreasonable, then, you know, almost on a red, amber, green scenario, we can get in there and you know, and Steve can get in and get his hands dirty and assist and try to remove some barriers. In a funny sort of way, we kind of dummy runned it before Christmas, where effectively, I don't think he thanked me for it, but I asked Steve to almost be Johnny on the spot for the Christmas arrangements, and any time there was a sniff of a disagreement, I dispatched Steve off to deal with it, and he did a fantastic job. But it actually showed it works. If you can get somebody, you know, if even if it's the SDL who's saying, no, I ain't doing that, or we ain't having this, if we can get somebody in to assist the reps locally, straight off the bat, 9 times out of 10, maybe even higher than that, 95 times out of 100, will resolve the situation, and that's what we're looking to do here. So it's building on what we've done well in other areas, Scott, and just saying, we want this to work. We want good outcomes. And the way to ensure that is to make sure that the reps are supported.
Excellent. Have you got any extra comments onto that, Steve?
Yeah. So basically, you know, two years ago when we did the first realignment, the agreement hasn't changed dramatically. In all honesty, you know, the commitments are there. It's just that we've firmed them up. But 2 years ago, there was a lot of mail centres that did a deal, but didn't do a realignment. So members got the shorter working week, but we didn't really get anything other than that. And really, what we've firmed up in this is that we'll actually get the benefits. So, you know, we'll resolve the resource and that kind of stuff. And what I mentioned earlier on about the model local agreement that every mail centre will sign up. Basically, that is written in a bit of a story kind of fashion. So it sets out at the beginning of it, which will obviously members will obviously get to see this when it's agreed and now for ballots in the local units. But what that actually does is it says what is the current situation in your unit. So average overtime, average agency, you know, your agreed duty structures, your agreed reserves, that kind of stuff. And then what you'll quickly see is that smacks you slap bang in the face. You know, how big is the problem that we need to solve here? So when you look at, just say, you know, Leeds on like the 11,000 hours, straight away on that spreadsheet, it says you have an 11,000 hours problem. How you're going to address it, and then through the governance documents, again, it says what are you put in place? So as an example, 180 jobs at the moment in Leeds Mail Centre on the late shift. That could go to 220, 230, 240, you know, whatever numbers agreed locally. So that's great. Put it on the agreement, but actually, what are we going to do now? So how we're going to resource that? Are we going to internal advertisement? We're going to go to agency conversion. We're going to go to one of the job sites, that kind of stuff, and advertise these jobs, success factors, etc. And that's going to be key. And the other thing that's also in this is ongoing commitment to agency resource review. So again, we'll fix it now, but obviously it's a moment in time. So what this agreement also gives is the area rep the absolute say for to say, look, you're using agency again, right? What we're going to do to fix this, so it's that kind of stuff. And then there's a post implementation review. So again, we're reviewing what's been agreed, what's been put in. Are the attendance times absolutely right? That kind of stuff. So there's ongoing resource and reviews as part of all of it. But the key thing is to make sure that we keep proper jobs. The mail centres resourced by CW members and not agency. That I know some agency are CW members, but agency are not recognized. We're not recognised with them. But we get these as proper jobs, so they get proper terms and conditions, proper holidays, holiday pay, etc., etc., etc. The benefits of a proper job, so they can go out and get a mortgage and move on with their lives with some stability behind them. And that's what the governance thing does. It gives absolute assurance that there's an agreement. That's the agreement going forward, and then there's a constant review to make sure that it's being adhered to. So the governance document's really, really good to assist reps in that regard.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Steve. So just to remind people at home watching, or even indeed at work if they're on their meal breaks, we've got around 15 minutes or so, possibly go a bit over if need be. So if you've got your questions, get them into the comments, and we'll try and put them to the panel. So
can I just come in there, Scott? Sorry, just
can.
What Steve was saying then about governments. One of my biggest bugbears since I've been area rep is in Leeds. We have a big attrition of people, so most years it's 30 to 40 people leave the business, and we've never been able to. We have to wait for an agreement to come out to replace these people. But now with this governance, we'll be able to look at it every 3 to 6 months. And if we have 10 people left, I can knock on the door and say, well, we need to uplift as part-timers if there's full-timers left, or we need to advertise or cover it on a short term with SA. But before, we never had none of this, and that's why mail centres are in such a dire strait, because we have an high turnover of people, ageing workforce as well, people finishing on IHR, and it's just hard to recruit back when you can't. There's no agreement that says where this governance. It's really good. Can I just pick up on? I've noticed there's a question in.
I was going to bring that in next now. Yeah. So if you're happy enough to answer that one, I was going to bring it up.
Yeah.
So we've got a question there from Dave McGow from, I presume, Leeds, because he's addressing it to you, Graham. So there we are on screen. If I understand it right, you had some Tuesday to Friday early turn duties created. We're in the last review, was it? Last hour reduction, and these are the sort of structures. I just want to know how they may be affected going forward.
Yeah, so we've got 22, we call them dawn shift starts. They start at 4:30, Scott, till 2 o'clock. So shorter working week, the 4-day attendance is, I'm still speaking with business. There's a few options. It's 15, you could do it 15 minutes a day. It just depends which shift, because it's over 2 shifts. So which shift is going to lose 15 minutes? We need to look at night shift because they were put in because of the erratic arrival profile that we had. Yeah. So we had 20 odd people. As last fans should be something like 6 minutes past 4, but we can get them up to 4:30, 4:45. So them 20 people were put in as to help night shift. So it's either off at night shift or off of the 2 o'clock dispatch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you-
as soon
it's
as
not-
we haven't agreed now yet, Scott, but as soon as I have agreed, I'll
Still in
speak to-
negotiations.
yeah.
It's a shame it's not starting at 4 o'clock because they'd get a, is it £6, £8 a week pay rise on an half an hour earlier.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there you go, Dave. That's from the horse's mouth. He'll keep you posted. And if you subscribe or opt into our broadcast from Leeds and Graham's personal broadcast, then I'm sure the information will come to you quicker. So in terms of moving the session along, we have to conclude that joint statement. It talks about the future discussions, and I think David's opening sort of gambit was about the future and some real challenges that we may have to address. So do you want to pick that up initially then, David?
Yeah, I mean, I think it falls into 2 areas, doesn't it? So that section really talks about the immediate challenges in processing. So I'll touch a bit on that and then maybe talk a bit more about the wider elements. But on that, what we did in processing was different to delivery. And I'm sure, having done a session, I think, with Martin Walsh and Darren Gorborky on the weighted items per work hour, anybody who was on that session will understand that in delivery, there was an immediate push for productivity, operating and initial revision activity. What we decided in processing is that we weren't in a position to do that. And the reality is because, and again, this was a major achievement in the agreement, because at one point the business was, when I say one point, I'm talking about October last year, the business were still talking about upper decile performance, comparing the worst mail centre from their perspective with the best, which in mail centre world means ridiculous compromises. So how can you compare Truro, effectively a 2-shift mail centre, with at the very end of the pipeline with Leeds or Manchester or Birmingham or the Mount or Glasgow? You're just not comparing apples with apples. So what we did is, as we said, first off, you only compare a unit with its own previous performance, so you're comparing like with like. But more importantly, we said mail centres, the current way that the business is measuring mail centres is clearly nonsense, because weighted items per work hour is a common language, but effectively the productivity element is linked back to a BSI equivalent. So 196 weighted items per hour per work hour is equivalent of 100 BSI. Mail centres were hitting the dizzying heights of 43 BSI, the way the business was counting it. Now, I'll make a bold statement. The mail centre that was hitting 43 BSI, people weren't sitting about with nothing to do. We've never been busier. The workload was huge. That might actually be the problem with mail centres that were stagnating. You couldn't move work. There was nowhere to move it to. So what we said to the business is, your figures are clearly nonsense. So we won't agree. We can't agree a baseline. And if we've not got a baseline, we can't agree an improvement. So what we said is, as we said earlier, current throughputs, establish your workload and resource, realign your resource against it. What we are tied to, though, was, I don't back away from it, is the 3-year flight path, productivity flight path described in the pathway to change. And what we are doing now in every mail centre, and not to either out him or embarrass him, Richard Isdale, who I know is on the call, has been doing a huge amount of work on this, because he's one of our trained industrial engineers and does a fantastic job. And it's about looking at why one mail centre is different to another. So getting proper planning values for your mail centre rather than generic ones that almost fit nobody. We're looking at bespoke planning values, and then a means of agreeing a flight path over the 3-year period. But that doesn't mean it's going to be what the business originally wanted, which is a revision every quarter. What they've agreed is now our agreements are fit for purpose. We have a quarterly review, and you'll review if we introduce new equipment that increases throughputs, then we will build that in, and that will give an increase in productivity. So that's the basis of the discussions that are ongoing with the business just now. And during a forum which is called the National Processing Group, where myself and Simon Barker, respectively on behalf of the union and the business, lead, but we're supported by our experts in the field. So Mahmood, Steve, others, Katrina for the RDCs, all of the PE members working in my department, handily Martin Walsh, the weighted items per work hour guru, for want of a better word. We are now talking about how we create a flight path, which, as you said, Scott, and it's really important. Increased productivity doesn't mean people working harder. It just means people working smarter, or the operation being organised better. We don't expect people to knock their pan in. We expect people to work and at the appropriate level, a fair day's work for a fair day's pay, no more than that. On the wider terms, and Steve, I'm sure Steve will want to comment on that. On the wider stuff though, the big ticket discussions just now are on the future pipeline, because look, we know what's already written in stone. There will be a parcel hub in the northwest at the Omega site in Warrington. There will be a Midlands parcel hub. I suspect, and listen, I suspect there'll be a third one in the south. I suspect that beyond that, there might even be a fourth and a fifth. But what we're absolutely keen to do is that they're not at the expense of the current network. So we are pushing hard. And the business have made commitments in this regard. Every mail centre to get parcel automation, and on a far, enhanced timeline. So Tyneside's getting one just now. There's another 3 in the pipeline. I think the new CEO has scared the life out of Simon Barker, because he said he wants to be at 70% automation by the end of 22. Simon Barker's desperately saying to me he doesn't think he can procure machines at that pace. But we're talking about 61 machines across the 37 mail centres. So not only will everybody be getting 1, many will be getting 2. Some of the ones that I've got 2 just now may get 3. And that will secure those sites. But of course, it does mean more automation. It does mean changes in the way we do things. Also, we've seen in real time over the last few weeks, Sunday deliveries becoming a reality. This weekend, Amazon will be dumping something like 120,000 items into Royal Mail for delivery today. That's a huge development that is going to change the way our processing centres have to function. Saturdays will become more important because we may well be doing a delivery on a Sunday. All of this brings in uncertainty, and we are currently working with the business and an external consultant to look at the best options. But those are options that are now based on our agenda, or the shared agenda, which is not parcel hubs are the only show in town, so let's look at another round of mail centre rationalisation. It's about saying, how do we use all of our network to the best advantage? Do we do things better in a mail centre than we would in a parcel hub? Yes, so let's do them. Can we maximise the amount of volume capacity the business has by better using our mail centres in addition to the parcel hubs? Yes, we can. So again, doesn't mean it won't be a difficult discussion. It will. Doesn't mean there won't be outcomes that people find challenging. I'm sure they will in some cases. But I'm pretty confident we can secure the future of all our mail centres and RDCs going forward. Some of the RDCs, as parcel hubs grow, may be like Northwest, where effectively the RDCs become part of a revised operation, which might include additional processing capability. But I think probably more so than any time in the last few years, we're in a good place now to shape a future that works for all of us in a time of growth rather than managing decline. So don't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean I'm not going to lose even more hair or it's going to turn greyer. But I think we're in a pretty positive position now.
Excellent. So, Steve, I know as part of this section, you did want to pick up about something in the 4 pillars, which I've got a copy here so I can put it on screen for our viewers. And it was 19.1, the processing and logistics, and it's about future job design and ways of working. So that's a sort of a reference point for people. Do you want to?
Yeah, so part of that, I mean, obviously, true to Davy's department, all the PE members will be involved in them discussions. But what that basically looks at is what is the future? What is the future for processing? How will we work differently? It could mean anything. But we've got an awful lot of agreements that protect people. But the big thing for us is making sure that we're in the room and we're negotiating what them new jobs would look like. At the moment, I think that everybody, in a mail centre can probably, feel this, where they feel like they've been knocked from pillar to post and moved around unnecessarily. Part of this redesign kind of thing is about making sure that jobs are more stable, that kind of stuff, and also how we work. How we work's going to be very, very important. So the parcel strategy that we've embarked upon, that's going to be massive. The parcel hubs over in the northwest, all of it fitting together really has an impact on all mail centres. But we've got to make sure that the jobs that we have are sustainable. There's no point in agreeing a job today and thinking that in 2 or 3 weeks or even 3 months, that job's not going to be there. And that's what the 19.1 is very much around, is making sure that we've got a shared view of what a job means, how efficient it is, the productivity measure, that kind of stuff. All of it fits together. And we haven't started them discussions yet, because we've had 2 years of Royal Mail saying they want to do this, and we've got 2 years of us saying we are not. So we've not managed to really get into that. But just in the last couple of weeks, we've got like a national processing group which we sit on with management, and we've started to restart them conversations. So once we get into that, we will get into it, and obviously we'll come out and consult with people about their views, because that's important. Obviously people do the job. We are here to serve, as everybody knows. But the good thing is that people will have a say in what that means for the future. But the big thing is about stability. It's about security, and it's about achievability as well. Because in some places, the management expectations outweighed the reality. So we've all heard the promise, the over promise and under deliver, and that's been a constant theme across the business, I would say. And the 19.1 discussions, as we'll call them, from the 4 pillars, will make sure that whatever is agreed is achievable, and people have had a say in that, so they understand what's expected of them in the jobs stable. So that, it'll be interesting discussions. I'm really looking forward to them, actually.
Excellent. It makes a change that we're looking forward to those sort of discussions. So, I mean, you both sort of mentioned about, as in Dave and Steve mentioned about, say, consulting and getting out into the field. I mean, using this sort of platform, it'd be quite interesting, I think, if we could actually, once restrictions allow, actually get in a session like this on site, wherever we can, in some of the mail centres, perhaps in Leeds or Newcastle or Sheffield, and sort of involve some of the members on the front rather than having to tune in, say, on a weekend. We get into the workplace and do that. So I think that'd be quite an interesting session if you guys are up for it. Now, in terms of, there's a comment or a question which may be directed towards Graham, or it might not be, but someone called Wayne, and it's to do with identifying the vacancies and having a full repick. So I'm sure that is something that people will be interested in, on how that formulates. And I understand it's sort of way forward aspect, isn't it? That you don't have to have a full repicking. It's all about major change in one thing or another, Graham. So have you?
Yeah. So full repick is if you've got X amount of jobs that have changed, and we aren't going to have a lot of jobs that have changed. To me, if you're sorting parcels, you're still going to be sorting parcels. It just might mean that we need another 20 people sorting parcels with you. And just to identify on that, when we are looking at every shift, I have got a meeting tomorrow with your weekend rep and your shift manager, and we'll be going through what the weekend looks like. And it'd be like every other shift, we're going to have to put hours in to weekends as well. So we haven't just identified lates that need hours. Every shift needs the hours because Steve alluded to 11,000 agency hours just in on one shift. That's spread over all 3 shifts. Well, 4 shifts actually with weekends. So we'll see what tomorrow's meetings brings, but we have got the model week now and we've done all base data. People will have seen me doing a lot of measuring with wheels, going around measuring how far it is to walk. And that cuts on to what David was saying about items per work hour. To me, efficiency will increase massively when we've just got one person doing the same job and we haven't got 30 agency doing job on a different day. That's going to increase efficiency straight away when you've got one person doing job.
Excellent. Yeah. So we've managed to go over the hour, so which is always a good sign because that shows that we had.
Scott, can I just come in a little bit just on the repick
Absolutely.
thing? Just so people are aware, the realignment agreement is about minimum disruption. So it's about not making wholesale changes to people's attendances. Because obviously that can be distressing for people. People have built their lives around their current attendance pattern. So it is about minimum disruption, and we're talking about moving anybody from shifts, and that's the other part of the agreement. However, what we would say is that if we're going to be creating some jobs, obviously they'll be advertised to everyone under the normal seniority process, under the way forward agreement, and people get to apply for them. So people might not want to move, and that's where the way forward agreement comes in. So if the jobs haven't changed dramatically, then they don't have to come off them jobs. They get to hold them. So we're doing these things through minimum disruption, but obviously the opportunities that I talked about before with the better attendances and the new jobs, etc. Everybody gets a slice, gets to have a chance of applying for them, going forward. But we are, I've got to be clear that we're doing this on minimum disruption because we've got people that have got flexible working agreements. We've got people that are covered by the Equality Act. They've got caring responsibilities outside of work, all them things. So we've been absolutely clear with the business that whereas we want to get this realignment successful, there might be some stalled hours, as they call them, where we can't move them hours, and there might be an absolute reason for that. But we've got the business to accept that might be the case. But the big thing for us is minimum disruption, but maximum effect on converting hours over into proper jobs. But I just don't want people to be thinking that all the jobs are up in the air. And we're going to be doing that, but Graham's right. There's an agreement. So if anybody wants to see that agreement, it's called the Way Forward Agreement, and it's section 14 actually, as it happens. So if anybody wants to flick straight to that page, it actually does talk about what's required for to actually have a full repick, which is a third of all duties, and then it's also to what extent them jobs are affected, 30 minutes or more, that kind of stuff. But even then, just because you're having a full repick, it's not you'll never ever have a full repick, I've got to be honest, because if my job is a 2 till 10 shift, as an example, and it's sorting parcels, and that job still exists at the end of realignment, then I can keep that job because it's unaffected. So but the key thing is minimum disruption. But obviously, I just wanted to be clear on that for people.
Thanks for that, Steve. So I think we need to sort of wrap that up now. So if we can just go around a couple of minutes each on really the final thoughts or comments about this joint statement, the future, and where we go now. So, David, you want to start that off, mate?
Yeah, by all means, Scott. I suppose I'll just finish firstly by saying thanks to everybody who's taking the time to join the session. We actually like doing them. It might surprise people, but we like to have the conversation. The worst thing about COVID is the fact that it's reduced the amount of face-to-face activities we've been doing. In the last few weeks, we've started to meet the business again face-to-face on occasions. Although some of that's even difficult. I mean, I went to HWDC on Monday and had to do a 5-hour meeting wearing a mask, which I've got to say weren't particularly easy. But listen, every one of you is doing it every day of the week in your workplace. So who am I to complain? It's great to be able to have these conversations. Look, we want a successful Royal Mail. It's one of the things I think we finally convinced the business. There's no value to the trade union in a failing Royal Mail. Last year when Royal Mail was targeting to maybe targeting is the wrong word, was expecting to lose in the region of 400 million quid. That's disastrous. It's as disastrous for us as it would have been for them, because effectively, the job security of our members depends on Royal Mail being successful. We've now got an opportunity on the back of the huge volume growth, which has been difficult. Everything, volume brings its own problems, but we'd rather have the problem of how do we deal with the work, or rather than how do we manage to climb. So I think we've got a basis here to move forward. I think the premise and processing of all of our agreements going back to going back many years, but certainly since the 4 pillars when we agreed that's a suite of resourcing documents, they still hold the field. And they were based on the premise, if you do one good revision well, you won't have to do another one for a while. If you then use the resourcing processes correctly, the weekly resourcing meeting, the quarterly reviews, then effectively you shouldn't get into a position where you, going back to the last subject, where you need a full re-sign because the place has fallen into disrepair. So this is about putting the building blocks in place to make sure that Graham and Leeds, that Tom and Tyneside, that Richard and Sheffield can make sure that they're on top and in control of resourcing all of the time, that it doesn't allow management to run away with agency, doesn't allow them to look for cheaper options, allows us to make sure that we are maximising the jobs that we have, make sure those jobs are good jobs, well rewarded jobs, and safe and secure jobs. That's what the role of the trade union is. I know Steve said earlier, and I'm sure I have upset a few people with the stance on VR in this agreement. But look, while I think people who've given long service to the company, if jobs go and they're surpluses, they should leave with dignity, and they should leave with a lump of money if they've earned it. But what we can't have is us manufacturing opportunities for people to leave the business when we've still got 11,000 hours of agency in the place. They're our jobs. That's our work. We should have it. You should have it. Those agency people or our part-time members should have the opportunity to achieve a full-time job that will secure their well-being, their security, and that of their family for years to come. We are still a company. Well, Steve said it earlier. I joined in the late 80s. I don't work for Royal Mail now, but I'm still in and around it. I've raised a family on the back of that employment. Most of the people on this call will have raised families on the back of the career that Royal Mail's provided. We want that to remain into the future. We want more people to have that opportunity to raise their family on the basis of excellent terms and conditions and a secure job, followed by a secure pension that actually provides them with a wage in retirement. They're easy things to say, they're difficult to achieve, but I think we're back now in a position where we can drive on and start to do these things. So stick with us. It's not always easy, but we are winning this particular tussle. We have got the business back on our agenda. We've now got a new CEO who's running everybody ragged. Whoever thought we'd have a company that wanted to meet the dates and an agreement? Unheard of. Outrageous. But they're doing it, and we're having to work to that. But listen, we're in a good place. So let's stick together. Let's get the best outcomes for everybody, and let's move on to the next round, because we know now we are a wholly privatised company. The company will never step back from wanting more, and we'll have to deal with it again. There'll never be a time where one agreement sets the bar for the future. We're always going to have to revisit it. But while we keep moving, while we keep delivering, we do so from a position of strength. So that's where we want to be. So thanks to everybody.
Excellent. Steve?
Yeah, obviously Davey's covered an awful lot there. I mean, all I would say is that we're in a fantastic situation, so for many, many years, even with when the company was privatised against our wishes, the company has been looking at cut, and that's been their favourite. It's been the budget says, when they're staff into mail centres, that kind of stuff, and we're in a fantastic situation at the moment to get some really a really high number of jobs. So we've had Royal Mail that's been in decline for so many years. We've got traffic coming through the door, that's currently being covered by agency staff. Let's get them jobs. That's going to be the big thing for me. Get them jobs. We're in a great situation to bolster the workforce. Bring mail centres back up to the correct level, and make sure that them quality jobs are there. So I think we're in a great situation. I think that we can provide people that have just come through the door with an absolutely brilliant opportunity to get a full-time job. With additional earnings on top, instead of putting their name down on an overtime list and relying on that and then going on holiday and then dropping down. I mean, I remember when I was a young man, bringing a family up, pre-way forward, where you couldn't afford to go on holiday. We were on £201 a week, back in the day. Pre the way forward agreement, you went on holiday and you were on £150, and it didn't even buy the shopping, so where we've come to now, we're on £450 a week basic, and then allowances on top and earnings. We're in a great place. We are in a great place. We're hopefully will have a holiday pay thing come through very soon. Certainly if that doesn't materialize, we'll have a court case, so that's coming on. So we're in a brilliant situation. We've got Royal Mail finally understanding that they can't ignore it, and if they do, we'll have a dispute. But they're wanting to work with at the moment. Simon Thompson seems to be saying the right things. Let's hope that he actually does it and not just says it, because we've been there before with the Leightons and Croziers of the world, where they come in and say, yeah, we want to do this, we want to do that, and then they're secretly plotting our downfall. But let's hope that the future is rosy. But I think that we're in a really good place to really grow the business, get stability, and hopefully, I've still got 20 years left to do in the business, so let's make sure it's a secure one. So thanks Scott.
Excellent. So Graham, wrap up, and just before we do, mine's gone blank. Go on.
Yeah. Well, I'd just like to thank Stephen, Davey and Terry for getting us this agreement, because if we hadn't got this agreement, I won't be in a position where I am talking about new jobs. And that's where we are. They've changed Royal Mail's mindset on, like they've both said, we want to make the company better and more jobs. And I'd just like to pick up on there's a question appeared about work time learning. As soon as COVID restrictions have lifted and we'll be back to work time learnings. Work time learnings are still there in everybody's duty. And you should be having a daily huddle. If you're not, bring it to attention of your workplace rep and we'll get that highlighted and sorted. And that's it from me. Just thanks for Steve and Davey and Terry for getting this fantastic agreement.
Yeah. Personally, I'd like to thank Davey and Steve and yourself, Graham. Obviously, we had this earmarked already, but thank you to Steve as well and Davey for taking the time on a Sunday to do this session. If people think this was a great session, to leave a comment and invite Steve and Davey back on for another session at some point. I'm sure they'll be willing to. So with that in mind, thanks for watching. Remember, unity is strength.